The Lunaverse by Rainbow Double Dash. Season 2, Episode 3, Magic Tutor by Rainbow Double Dash. Chapter 1, An Overdue Twilight. Twilight Sparkle had known what to expect. Rushing winds, peals of lightning, a spear of nothingness displacing reality, herald her return before depositing her at the bottom of a smoldering crater. What actually happened, though, was decidedly anticlimactic. One moment she had been in that impossible gulf between worlds, and the next she found herself sitting in the central town square of Ponizawa next to a fountain, almost as she had never left in the first place. Certainly none of the ponies in the surrounding area seemed to pay her any arrival any mind, going about their ordinarily daily routines undisturbed, heedless of the lavender unicorn that but mere moments before hadn't been there. Had she awoken in her bed, she might have dismissed it all as a dream. It could still possibly have been some sort of delusion. She was fairly certain she was still sane and in control of all her faculties. Plus, there had been promises she made to herself. No more running, no more hiding. Not just from the law, but from herself either. It was time for Twilight Sparkle to own up to all her mistakes, no matter the consequences. And yet, could she really do it? Could she really bring herself just to surrender to the authorities? It'd be so easy to just disappear. Even though she had promised both to herself and the princess, she couldn't deny the temptation was there. Then she remembered just how lonely and isolated these past few months had been. She couldn't go back to living that. With no family, no future, no hope. Still, it was hard, and Twilight felt her stomach turning in knots, while her hosts seemed as though they were rooted in place. She was afraid. Not of the punishment and humiliation that awaited her, but of her own cowardice. She feared to see someone just trying to move from where she sat, she would inspire herself right away all over again. No! She hadn't realized her crying was being aloud until another mare walked up to her.
Pardon me, miss, but is everything all right?
Yes, no, I mean... Twilight stammered as her jaw quavered in dread of words she was trying to form. I need a... She gulped audibly. A police officer. The other mare's expressive and concern deepened.
Are you in some kind of trouble, miss? Are you hurt? I can help carry you to the hospital.
Just please. Please go and find a police officer. Do it as quickly as you can. The other mare looked confused and hesitant, but nodded. As Twilight watched the pony trot out, she breathed a sigh of relief. It was all finally going to be over. There was no longer turning back now. Yet, there's no telling how long it would take for an officer to arrive. Even if she didn't have time to run, she could still teleport. It would be so simple, so effortlessly easy that she absolutely felt the familiar spell weave its way through her horn. With a smack her own hoof, Twilight forcefully denied any such treacherous desires. She held firm in her resolve, bringing the nightmare of these past few months to its final, inevitable close. She repeated her promise again and again like a mantra. Whether aloud or only in her own head, she didn't know. No more running, no more hiding. Still her breath was increasingly came in more frantic pants. With each passing moment she sat, eye clenched, tightly shut, every muscle in her body tense. She shut out all distractions and focused on the singular task of not abandoning her promise. No more running, no more hiding, no more running, no more...
Excuse me, but I was told you need some kind of assistance.
Twilight nearly jumped from her own skin when she was tapped on the shoulder. Now, as she slowly brought her eyes into focus, and with her mind back to her present circumstances, she couldn't help but tremble at the opposing figure of the uniformed stallion in front of her. Though his face bore a genuinely helpful, if concerned smile to Twilight, felt almost as like a cruel mockery of her impending doom. Clearly, the officer didn't recognize her on sight. Maybe because he had not been part of the raid to capture her, perhaps he was only a new recruit hired in the interim after he made her escape. It didn't matter, though it certainly would have made things much easier if he identified her on sight. Part of her would have preferred her being violently tackled to the ground over this. And again, the temptation to flee or just make us alive would be so easy. She muttered once more, no more running, no more hiding, then held a deep breath.
I'm sorry, I didn't quite hear that.
Saying sharply, Twilight finally spoke the words and will forever seal her fate. I need you to arrest me. The officer cocked his head briefly, then knocked a hoof against his ear.
Sorry, but I think I must have misheard that last part. Sounded like you said you wanted me to arrest you?
The traitorous part of her screamed once more in vain, demanding she flee, that she do anything she could to escape. She could still do it. It would be so. No! Now Elsber's hadn't been in denial of guilt, only to silence her own thoughts before they bested her resolve. So quickly demanded, yes, my name is Twilight Sparkle, and I'm a wanted fugitive. Don't look at me like that. Not insane. I'm just tired. So very, very tired. All I wanted to do was see my family one last time before I had to serve out my debt to society. She held out her forehooves so they could be easily cuffed. She also lowered her head, in a mix of defeated resignation, mournful shame, and of course, to make it easier for the officer to slip a magical suppressor ring onto her horn. She breathed deeply. Stacy sat fully committed. Her fears all seemed to finally evaporate. It was all over. Finally over.
Miss Sparkle?
Twilight startled. She was woken from her dream, or rather her memory. Blinking a few times and holding up a hoof against the glare of daylight coming into the train car's window, she found herself looking at an earth-pounding stallion, dressed in a plain brown uniform, holding a clipboard with one hoof.
We're here, Miss Sparkle,
he said. Behind him, Twilight could see a second pony, this one a Pegasus in an identical uniform. Twilight nodded, standing and stretching. She was surprised she had been able to get any sleep at all on the train ride, which had only been a 2-hour one from Camelot's municipal prison to Ponyville. Slipping on saddlebags, using her mouth and hooves, she still wore a magic-suppressing horn ring that prevented her from using even simple telekinesis. It contained a few personal belongings she was taking with her. She followed her escorts from the morning train and onto the platform of Pineville's train station. There was a small bustle of ponies already, getting off the train, but more piling into it. The station seemed almost new, or at least it had been rebuilt recently. The wooden floor was finely polished, the walls and benches clean of any sign or dust decay. The window had separated the ticket master from the main station, free of any scratches. The only thing out of place was construction occurring along the sides of the rail line itself. Ponies lifting tall poles into place, stringing up a series of wires. Telegraph wires, Twilight realized. Of all Equestria's major cities, other than the Pegasus Cloud cities, and would be connected to the telegraph network, the system was now finally expanding to the smaller municipalities and boroughs. Twilight followed her escorts as they left the train station and entered Pineville proper. The whole town, she noticed, looked shiny and new, despite the fact that it was mid-autumn. New windows, new walls, new gardens, and where it didn't look new, it looked subtly old and rustic. Houses had been built decades or longer before and been given plenty of time to sell into their places, become a natural part of town. Though even these, Twilight noticed, seemed to have a fresh coat of paint or new-looking fence in several areas. Twilight felt her mood darkening and decided to do construction and paint jobs. She knew the reason. At the start of last summer, Pineville had been attacked by a minion of Corona. She didn't have all the details, but she did know that afterwards, Pineville had asked for financial help from the World Emergency Management Registry, the REMM, which her father, Viceroy Nightlight, headed. The request for help had initially been denied, ostensibly because the REMM wanted to take the time to assess the situation. But in reality, because her father was using his position to get back at Trixie Lulamoon, the town's representative of Night Court, and was also the one peripherally responsible for sending her so many months on the run as a fugitive. Twilight still wasn't sure how she felt that. What her father had done was wrong. But then, with him unable to get in contact with Twilight in any way, he only been acting out of fear and despair. In a way, a direct way, it was her fault. The point of it all was, though, that Twilight Sparkle, daughter of the pony who had tried to strangle Ponyville, the unicorn had brought an Ursa Minor into town simply to prove her own magical prowess, and had stupidly let it get out of control, wreak more than a little havoc, was coming to live in town. Twilight let out a sigh, hanging her head as she trotted. The ponies here would probably hate her, and they had every right to. She had a debt to pay to them. She intended to pay it. After several minutes of trotting, Twilight and her escorts reached the tree, the largest that Twilight had ever seen. The tree wasn't just for decoration, however. Its insides had been worked out, as evidenced by the windows and doors across its surface. The tree was nevertheless alive in spite of this. though its leaves were browning given the season. A sign that hung from the tree's front door identified the tree/building as Golden Oaks Library. Twilight wasn't surprised when she saw there were a few ponies waiting for her at the library's front door. The first was a beige-dwarf pony with a gray mane wearing a cravat, and the queuing mark of a scroll tied with a blue ribbon. This would be Ivory Scroll, the mayor of Ponyville. Standing next to her was a pony with much more familiar to Twilight. A blue unicorn with silver hair, wearing a purple star-studded wizard's cap and cape. Trixie grinned when she saw Twilight waving. Twilight offered a slight smile of her own, though it was put on as the Pegasus of her escorts trotted over to the mayor and began talking to her. Trixie, meanwhile, trotted over to Twilight.
How are you?
She asked. Twilight blinked a few times, looking around the town. No ponies seemed to be paying her much attention, but they seemed, to her eyes, to be doing such in a very deliberate way. They all had to know her and remember her, didn't her?
Scared, she admitted, though her weak smile didn't drop.
Trixie's more honest smile didn't either.
You'll be okay. I promise, she said. The ponies here put up with me. Remember?
Twilight chuckled slightly at that. Not much, but it was real. She looked back to the library.
Looks like it's just the one from the other world,
she nodded. It was difficult to think that this time, only a few months ago, she had been some kind of parallel Equestria, where Celestia had remained good, and instead been Princess Lunatic had gone mad. Trixie nodded.
Layout inside is a little different, though, she said. You're only going to have the top floor to yourself. There's a kitchenette, bathroom, bedroom, and a small living room, a few closets. The observatory on top is something you can reach from your place, but it's also accessible from the ground floor from a spiral staircase. It's open to the public. What's yours is, small.
Twilight's smile grew a little larger, and significantly more genuine. Except for the entire library I'll have under my hooves at the closing time. You know, maybe you'll hoof at the tree as a whole.
Well, yeah, except that.
Trixie nods, tilting her hat down a little. She began to say something else when the mayor and her escort came up to Twilight. Trixie and Twilight both stood a little straighter, expecting something official to begin now. All right, then, Miss Sparkle, her escort said, if you could just tilt your head forward so I could get that ring off.
Twilight did.
The Pegasus used his hose to slip the magic-suppressing ring from her horn. The tingle traveled up and down its length, where Twilight could stop herself. She sent some magic through it. Not much, just enough to make it glow. After about 2 months of not being able to use her horn, it felt good to have it up and running again, as it were. None of these ponies' presence begrudged her to my cantrip. Okay, her escort said. Twilight Sparkle, your formal sentencing to Ponyville begins now. You'll be working in this library for the town of Ponyville. 50% of your pay will be deducted from your earnings each month, and go into town at Ponyville to pay for damages caused this past spring. In return, however, the town has elected you to allow you to live in the library rent-free. Though note that this will not cover any utility expenses. Do you understand?
Twilight nodded. The exchange seemed more than fair, all things considered.
The escort continued. Your house arrest at Ponyville will last until you have completely paid your debt to Ponyville out of your library earnings, and you have served at least 5 years here. While under house arrest, barring a life-threatening emergency, you may not leave the library without a designated escort. And even with such an escort, you may not leave Ponyville without special permission from the Royal Police Bureau. Pegasus turned to Trixie, gesturing with one hoof. Representative Trixie is your designated escort, and she may herself designate a second in case she should be unavailable.
Trixie's head tilted to the side. Do I have to pick one now?
She asked. The Pegasus shook his head. And you can change it as necessary, though there is a form you have to fill out each time you do. I advise against doing it too often, however. More than once we've run into situations where the main escort would simply deputize some pony nearby, or do up a bunch of the forms with the name of the second left blank, and give it to the pony under house arrest, giving the sentenced pony the freedom to come and go as they please. That defeats the entire purpose of a house arrest. It can lead to penalties for both of you.
Although,
Irish Scroll put in, raising a hoof,
the town council of Ponyfield is hoping that you use your chances to leave the library in order to see a personal reconciliation with some of the ponies who were affected by the Ursa Minor's fit.
or else to help the town out during, for example, the running of the leaves or start of winter. Twilight blinked, even as the escort nodded.
Being proactive in this way may, no, I'm saying may, lead to, with permission from Ponyville's town council, a loosening of some of your sentencing terms, though not its length.
Justice should be about symmetry, not punishment, Iris Curl continued. So notice that you're here for more than to fulfill the debt. Help us out, Miss Sparkle, and we'll help you.
Twilight paused as he considered that. Would any pony really want to be helping me out? She asked. After what I did.
She stopped when she heard light laughter from Trixie and Iris Curl both. She glanced between the two of them in confusion, and Iris Curl raised a hoof. This is Ponyville, Twilight, she said. Only for a week or two before you first came here, the town was attacked by parasites. A few weeks after you left, there was a wild phoenix, and after that, well, let's just see, Miss Sparkle, I do believe your Ursa Minor is as par for the course here.
Tracy nodded. Some towns have landmarks. Some have famous ponies. Some have rustic charm. Ponyville has the occasional monster attack.
Twilight blinked a few times at that, while Iris Curl thanked the two escorts and sent them on their way.
Don't worry. You'll like it here,
Trixie said, putting a hoof on Twilight's withers and guiding her towards the library's front door.
Oh, welcome to Ponyville. My little pony, ah, my little pony. Friendship never meant that much to me, my little pony. But you're all here now, I can see. Stormy weather, Gloucestershire, a musical bond with loving gear, teaching laughter. It's an easy feat. Magic makes it all complete. You have my little ponies. How did I ever make so many true friends?
You're watching the Lunaverse, only on the Hub. Presented by Hasbro. And presented by Sunny D. After the curse that Corona's minion, Sakura, had placed on Ponyville, forced the citizens of the town to drink alcohol without end, without allowing them to pass out, though fortunately also not allowing them to poison themselves, the town had been rendered a complete wreck. Nowhere had this been more true than Barry Punch's bar, which had essentially been the epicenter of the disaster. Tables had been broken, windows smashed, floors stained, an entire wall had collapsed, and of course its entire stock had been completely depleted, equally as completely not paid for, at least for the most part. But that was months in the past now. Emergency money had come from Canterlot, eventually, and distributed as necessary to the various town ponies who had needed to rebuild their lives. Now, with a new door, new windows, new wall, fresh coat of paint, and fresh stock of fine beverages, Barry's bar had opened its door again. Barry had been worried, Trixie knew, that every pony would be wary of going anywhere near alcohol after what happened. And even her doors opened once again last Friday, so he'd still be facing a number of very poor months ahead. She had been quite wrong, of course. It turned out that after months of not being able to kick up their hooves at the local tap house, after a long, hard week of working their fields and orchards, the farmers of Ponyville, even Applejack, had been eagerly counting down the days until the bar had opened again. Never mind everybody else who had lived in the town proper, especially Trixie. That Friday had been the best that Barry's bar ever had. Today, Tuesday evening, was looking slower. It still had been plenty of busy as Trixie trotted in, giving Barry and the orange-coated stallion that helped her 10-bar wave as she did. She made to go to her usual seat, but saw, of all points, raindrops already sitting at the bar, drink in front of her, a head hanging, mane obscuring her eyes. Yikes! Trixie says she tried over to the Pegasus, her friend, sitting down next to her.
Rough day.
Raindrops snored slightly.
Sorry to hear,
As she said, signaling the barkeep for her usual.
I guess that Rainbow Dash's burnt up streak couldn't last forever, though. I guess it has something to do with her again.
Raindrops snored again. Trixie sighed sadly, though she eyed Raindrops a moment before pressing on. Her wings were limp, though, and she seemed fairly relaxed. She wasn't giving any outward signs that Trixie had learned to recognize as her tales for when her anger was in danger of boiling over.
Well, thanks for tonight's day, anyway,
she said as her drink appeared in front of her courtesy of Barry. Bourbon, of course. Raindrops didn't see too incensed. It wasn't telling Trixie to leave her alone. So she resolved to stay.
Sparkles arrived in town. Spent the day with her and the mayor, getting her situated in the library. I'm here for a celebratory class for that. You should have seen her. She was so nervous.
Raindrops let out a slightly more audible snort at that. Trixie took a swig of her bourbon as she considered.
I guess you're right. She conceded. I suppose she does have a good reason to be nervous. But hey, those parasites never came back to fix anything. Neither did that Phoenix or Corona. So that's put a leg up over them, right?
Raindrop's only response was another snort. Trixie's eyes narrowed.
Hey, come on, she insisted. Sparkle's been through a lot. Snort. She has! Snort. No, that's not really very mature. Snort!
Trixie opened her mouth to retort to that. Raindrop's head leaned forward, then more forward, and then ended up in her drink, knocking over and splashing her, the bar, and the floor. At that, her wings flared up as she said something. It sounded like a buzz-law, but Trixie wasn't sure. Head shot back as she glanced around glassy eyes.
What? She asked, wait, when did I get here?
Trixie was aware of Barry and a bartender then. Barry looking at Raindrops closely before turning to the bartender. Okay, so it's just a soda, Fizzy. She instructed. That is soda. The bartender said. He went over to the bar with a rag, cleaning up the mess as Raindrops ran her hose over her eyes. Ginger ale! Barry raised a brow. So let's do the diet then, she said. Raindrops blinked a few more times before letting out a low groan.
Sorry, she said, waving her hoof. Haven't slept much in the past few, Did I pay already?
And not for Barry. Raindrops sighed.
Sorry. Okay, I'll go.
She turned, trying from the bar with her head hanging.
Wait, hang on,
Trixie said. The Raindrops didn't seem to hear her as she tried outside. She sculled back her bourbon, ignoring the burn to her throat with practiced ease. She passed a few bits to pay for it. Before setting off after Raindrops, her friend hadn't gone far. Raindrops was trudging down the street towards her home, wings still sagged a little and head hanging low. Trixie caught up to her easily.
Raindrops, she asked, is everything okay?
Raindrops glanced up at Trixie, ruffling wings.
Yeah, I'm fine, she said. Honest?
Trixie asked. That's right.
No pun intended, I swear.
Raindrops nodded, smiling a little anyway at Trixie's accidental reference to the Pegasus' element of harmony.
Yeah, honest,
she promised, stopping and sitting back on her haunches, again running her hose over her face.
I'm just exhausted.
One of the sodas picked me up. Guess it didn't work. Just need to sleep, I guess. Trixie's head tilted to the side.
Rainbow Dash, she asked.
As if there was a reason Raindrops was unusually tired. It was usually somehow related to her erstwhile weather captain hiking off. Raindrops shook her head again, however.
No, she's been fine lately. Job was fine. Just haven't been getting a lot of sleep this week.
She started trotting again. Trixie kept pace.
Snails has been getting these headaches for the past 2 weeks.
Worse than he tries to sleep, so he ends up staying up all night. So I stay up all night to make sure he isn't trying to let
I don't know, a really big hairy spider or something into the house.
Trixie started the thought, though Raindrops didn't, being more to use Brother's love of creepy crawlies that was his special talent.
What about your parents?
Trixie asked. Raindrops rolled her eyes.
You know my dad. He's half asleep all the time anyway. My mom could give Pinkie Pie a run for her money with how aircheck she is.
Trixie stared.
So, your whole family's being kept up just because Snails has been having headaches?
Trixie asked. She smirked a little.
A lucky foal. Whenever me or one of my cousins try to stay up all night, taunt Moonslinger when trying to keep us asleep in the bayou with the alligators. Of course, Skyscraper actually once took us out there, too.
Raindrops raised an eyebrow at that. Trixie laughed, waving a hoof.
Cool just ended up turning into a camping trip. Got some fireflies, brought some marshmallows home. No need, les moustiques.
Trixie was fond of that particular memory, right the itsy day after it.
And anyway, we never even saw a gator.
Raindrops needed a moment, but then shook her head as she pressed forward.
They're bad headaches, she said, tapping her head.
Snails says they're right up here, at the base of his horn. Whenever he goes to sleep, he only ends up getting a few minutes before waking up. then nothing will keep him down. Weird thing is, he doesn't seem to be getting tired, though. At least Charlie doesn't notice anything. She sighed. If the same thing happens tonight, we're taking him to the hospital. See what's going on. Trixie considered, frowning.
East of his horn.
She asked. Raindrops nodded.
And he can't sleep. Mind if I see him? Promise I won't be alone. I think I might know what the problem is, and I might know how to help.
Raindrops' wings and head perked a little at that. Yeah, if you can, she said. By now, the two had reached Raindrops' home. A small two-story house, smaller than his neighbors, but notable for having a somewhat flatter roof with a railing, a door leading to it. Raindrops lived there with her father, Dewdrops, mother Shutterbug, and little brother Snails. Trixie sometimes wondered how their family, the three of them who were pig-eyed, could stand living in such cramped conditions. And only assumed they tended to use the roof as an impromptu third floor when the weather was good. Or not, as may have been the case with Raindrops. Raindrops let the two of them in, calling out a hello to any pony who was home as he did. Trixie followed her through the narrow hall that was living in her living room, where the two found Dewdrops, who had a blue coat and sandy blonde mane, a day's newspaper of Ravu, and a pipe in his mouth. A scene that was bizarrely picturesque to Trixie. He looked up for the paper, smiled when he saw Raindrops and Trixie.
Good evening, Trixie.
He said slowly. Dewdrops was one of the most sedate ponies Trixie ever met.
What brings you here?
He glanced at Raindrops.
Anything to do with why Raindrops looks like she detoured through Tartarus on her way here?
Raindrops rolled her eyes at that, leaving a huff. Thanks, Dad. She told she glanced upstairs. Snails is in the room? Dewdrops nodded with his head.
With your mother and their newest friend.
Raindrops' legs sagged. Legs? She asked.
8.
Dewdrops responded, turning back to his newspaper, chuckling. Raindrops' legs sagged further. Come on, she said to Trixie, climbing the stairs up. Trixie followed, trying to figure out what Raindrops' question and Dewdrops' answer had been all about. He had put together by the time they reached the second floor. When Raindrops opened the door to her brother's room, Trixie looked in. Snails looked out. So did Shutterbug, whose coat was much like Raindrops', and he was similar as well, albeit with a white stripe. And so did something eight-legged, disturbingly large, and more than a little hairy, with a few too many eyes for Trixie's liking.
Snails,
Trixie said after a long moment.
There's a tarantula on your head.
Snails usually got quite excited when he saw Trixie, but that excitement was opposite today. Perhaps it had something to do with the tarantula sitting on his head, just behind his horn, with a few of its legs resting on his horn and the rest on his head. He did wave its raindrops to Trixie. Hi, sirs, he said calmly. Hi, Trixie. Trixie looked at Shutterbug, who was filling with a camera.
Shutterbug,
Trixie said,
there's a tarantula on your son's head. Oh, yes, I know. I brought her home with me after the shoot for this month's magazine.
Shutterbug said, in extremely stark contrast to her husband. She spoke in a mile a minute. Her wings often twisted enough that she was ready to take flight at a moment. She's a red key translator for the update. I'm calling her Fluffy, Snails said. As he was at the studio candlelight because he was already smelting and we wanted to get photographs, but that sure ended earlier than expected. It always happens to me, don't know why. We had her until tomorrow anyway, so I thought I'd introduce her to Snails. Isn't she magnificent? Trixie blinked a few times, looked at Raindrops. Raindrops, she said. There's a tarantula on your little brother's head. Does the studio know you brought Fluffy home? Raindrops asked. Shutterbug tittered a little, tapping the side of her nose. Her take us little dogs and rocks and stuff. If anybody even checks, they'll assume she's hiding. I figured just a few photographs of Snails, and then I could take her back tomorrow morning, and nobody's the wiser. Why is nobody concerned about the tarantula on Snails' head? Trixie asked. I'm concerned. Deeply concerned. Snails laughed a little, looking up. Slowly raised the hoof to the tarantula, Fluffy, placing his tip just in front of her, tilting his head slightly towards the hoof. Fluffy, without hesitation, crawled onto his hoof, as he then lowered to look eye to too many eyes with tarantula before gently nuzzling it. May have tried a trick of the light, but Trixie was pretty sure the tarantula nuzzled back. Then Snails gently carried Fluffy over to a small tank, full of sandy pebbles and stones, as he immediately crawled off his hoof into the tank, which he closed. Trixie stared.
She opened her mouth and raised a hoof. She closed her mouth, lowered a hoof. She bowed her head and thought deep thoughts. Raindrops chuckled as her friend tried to puzzle through how to deal with what she just saw. Instead, trotted to the room now that the deadly spire was safely and comfortably stored. She sat down next to Snails to secure wrapped in a wing hug. How's the head? Snails' ears and head drooped a little. Okay, he said bubbly to the base of his horn. Mostly just this ache now. Haven't slept, though. I want to, but I can't. Or I can, and I wake up and it hurts. Starbug let out a long sigh as he fizzed up her camera. Right over to Snails and drawing him in a big hug.
Don't worry, Snails. We'll get to the bottom of this. You, me, and Fluffy can help too.
Maybe the doctor somehow. No! Snails exclaimed eyes wide. I hate the hospital. It smells funny. It doesn't let anybody bring their pets in.
Starbug smiled. But honey, the doctors only want to help you.
I don't wanna. Starbug put her front hose on her hips. Looked like she was about to lay down a little law. Raindrops coughed into one hoof before she could, glancing at Trixie.
Actually, she said, Trixie says she might be able to help.
Starbug blinked a few times at that, before turning to the blue unicorn. Pressing your hose together.
Really? She asked. I didn't know you had any kind of medical Trixie.
Trixie shook her head at that, dispelling a reverie. She decided to forget about Fluffy and move on. She put on her best smile.
Well, no, I don't,
Trixie admitted, starting forward.
But I do have a guess of what might be the problem.
She looked at Snails.
Snails, do you know how to do telekinesis yet?
Snails blinked a little. Sorta. He admitted, looking down, scuffing hoof on the floor.
Well, let's see,
Trixie said, looking around the room for a test object. She knows more than a few tanks full of more than a few bugs. Besides, she didn't like looking around Snails' room that much. Instead, she took off her hat and sat down in front of Snails.
try looking this.
She said, her own horn glowing, and whites of her eyes turning slightly blue. Mind's eye, Snails' body took on a mostly pink glow, the color of unicorn magic. At least as he'd been taught to perceive it. Was faded to a more greenish gold color around Snails' horn, the color of his personal magic. Snails looked nervously at Trixie's hat for a few moments before bracing himself, standing with 4 legs set wide apart, his head stooped. He set his horn glowing, closing his eyes. Horn glowing solid green gold. Magic aura slowly wrapped around Trixie's hat, though it gave out after a moment. Grunting, Snails tried a few times. Got his magic wrapped around Trixie's hat, and as it lifted a few feet out the air. The foal, however, was quite visibly straining, teeth gritted and eyes screwed shut. While meanwhile, his magical aura showed a significant buildup of green gold magic at the base of his horn, only a small trickle actually traveling out the horn slave and projecting outwards.
Okay, that's good, Snails,
Trixie said, raising a hoof and canceling her magic sight spell. Snails let Trixie's hat drop to the floor with relief. He was panting more than a little, and Raindrops and Starbug both had their hose on his back to steady him as he sat down.
Okay, I'm pretty sure I know the problem,
Trixie said, leaning between Raindrops, Starbug, and Snails.
Snails, I'm guessing you don't use your magic pretty often.
Snails thought, tongue in teeth as he looked upwards. After a long moment, he shook his head. I guess not, he admitted. I don't think I have a lot.
No, that's not it,
Trixie said, smiling as she looked at the two Pegasi. So you're right, this is a very simple problem to fix.
Unicorn magic is like Pegasus magic. Your magic is focusing your wings and hooves.
She held up and waved her front hose for instances.
And a little bit leaks out whenever you move a cloud, or flap your wings, or whatever. It's constantly moving, and shifting, and being used to replenish, right?
Raindrops and Starbug both nodded, and Trixie continued.
Unicorn magic, though, is focused out of our horns, of course.
She tapped her own horn.
But it doesn't leave us unless we wanted to. When we use telekinesis, make it glow, or cast a more complex spell. So, we have more precise control over our magic than Pikachu, or opponents. The trade-off, though, is that we're restricted to just a few spells based around our special talents. Easily, and that we could potentially use up too much of our magic at once, and hurt ourselves by over-channeling. But what is happening here is the opposite of that. Under-channeling, I guess you could call it.
She looked at Snails, lowered herself on her knees, and looked him in the eye. Though she didn't have to stoop low, as she might have needed with other foals, given that Snails was fairly tall for his age.
Basically, she told him, you're not using your magic enough. It's building up inside you. It's starting to give you headaches because of that. Your magic, watch out.
Snails blinked out a few times before looking down. Sorry.
He apologized. Hey, relax, Trixie said, waving a huff. It's okay.
Oh, just sort of makes it awful, doesn't it?
Said Bug asked, tapping her front hose together, while Raindrop's head cast down in thought.
Since without unicorns, we don't know how to help Snails learn magic. He's all behind his unicorn friend's school, isn't he? This can't be fixed, can't it?
She waited over again, standing.
I don't really know, but I'll bet this is a common problem amongst unicorns raised by parents from other tribes.
See, Trixie said. That's right.
Seeing as how a Pegasus raised by unicorns will probably take longer to learn how to fly and use weather magic. It's just one of those things. Anyway, all Snails needs to do is use more magic more often, and preferably learn how to use more of it at once. But doing more complex spells to does telekinesis or making his horn glow. So go down to Snails again, smiling. You have a lot more magic than you think, Snails. You just don't know how to use it yet. You just have to practice.
She raised a hoof, conjuring a trio of small balls of light, which she juggled over her hoof, even as she flashed through a rainbow of colors.
That's why I use my magic as often as I can. Practice makes perfect.
Snails started to smile at that, but darkened after a moment. Oh, but I don't know how to practice, he said morosely. I'll see how his horn is straining a little. After a few false starts, he got it to glow. Magic is hard.
Trixie tapped a hoof to her mouth. Well, she said, tomorrow's Wednesday, you're right. I was telling Dinky how to use magic for the past half a year on Wednesdays, helping her out. Dinky's like you, Snails. Her mom's a Pegasus. I can't show her how to use her unicorn magic. Trixie looked up to Sarah Bug. It was okay with you and Dewdrops. I could start teaching Snails, too. I said you wouldn't mind.
Really?
Sarah Bug asked. Really? Snails asked. Standing up, and eyes perked wide. I could learn magic for the Great and Powerful Trixie. He beamed more than a little. Something yes could have been done. Snails wanted more than that. She was willing to provide. She picked her hat back up and flourished it before planting it back on her head, with on the brim lowering it all over her eyes.
You could learn the most magnificent of magics, she proclaimed. The most spectacular of spells. The most awesome arcane secrets and sensational sorceries ever witnessed by pony eyes.
Trixie finished this by rearing back her hooves, one hoof stretching up high, as literally fireworks went off behind her. But she made sure to keep the noise relatively down. It was all Snails needed to turn to his mother. Can I, Mom? Yes, can I, please, 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 please? Sarah Bug smiled brightly.
Of course you can, she said. Raindrops can bring you here after school tomorrow. You don't mind, do you, Dunny? Raindrops, dear.
The three other ponies looked at Raindrops. It was sitting back on her haunches, head cast down, mane obscuring her eyes. After a moment, a slight start escaped her, but didn't otherwise move. Trixie chuckled at her escaping friend, looking back to Sarah Bug.
Tomorrow, after school, she said, I promise to be the best magic tutor in Equestria!